One of my most favorite security people, his name's Mike Martin. He majored in biology. So how do you get into security? Number one, I recommend to the people that I work with is any type of discipline on where your superpowers are. There's a role for you in security.
You've gone from a small town in central Louisiana to being a top global security leader.
You're absolutely right. I came from a town of 15,000 people, and I thought a skyscraper was a 3-story building that we had on our main street.
A lot of people have this misconception when it comes to security. People imagine, hackers sitting in hoodies.
Yeah, it's not all about hackers and hoodies. It's about the continual evolution of governance and regulations and all the different things we've got to know there.
How would you compare the role of a CISO to a role of a CFO, a CIO, CRO, and a CDO?
Well, I think the first difference is CFOs make a lot more money.
AI right now is shaking up everything. What's something you're excited about?
Most exciting about AI is not having to do the yucky work. And so
For someone who's curious but overwhelmed by security, what's one real actionable thing they can do this week to get started?
I just actually shared this with someone the other day. I said,
After starting this series and getting traction, a lot of people ask me this question. So can you help us actually define what does a CISO actually do? Today, we're breaking that down. Today, we're sitting down with Mignona Cote, somebody who came from a small town in central Louisiana and became a global security leader. She's led security at some of the world's biggest names: Aetna, Bank of America, AWS, NetApp, and she's currently at Infor. We'll talk about her journey, what you need to know when a breach happens, how the role of a CISO is evolving, and what it all tells us is how the cybersecurity industry and where it is headed next. Let's get into it. I want to understand you more as a person, Mignona. You've gone from a small town in central Louisiana to being a top global security leader. What did that journey look like?
you're absolutely right. I came from a town of 15,000 people called Natchitoches, Louisiana. It's the city where Steel Magnolias was filmed. And I thought a skyscraper was a 3-story building that we had on our main street. Meanwhile, somehow, all I knew is if I wanted a job, I had to get to Dallas, Texas. And so I got to Dallas, Texas. I did not know what a corporation was other than what they taught me in school, nor did I know anything about security. I knew that I needed to major in computers because that was the trend. If you major in computers, you'll make a lot of money. It's like, oh, okay, that sounds interesting. So I ended up going to Shreveport, Louisiana, getting recruited after I got my graduate degree from LSU in Louisiana and 2 bachelor degrees from Northwestern State University in Louisiana. I've got to plug them, but went to Dallas, Texas, got a job in a financial analyst program. And from there, all of a sudden, here I am, having worked at 7 Fortune 50 companies and now NetApp, where I met you, and Infor. Infor is a SaaS provider of helping companies operate their businesses. I never ever thought I would be in this position. The good thing is I didn't know what I was doing, and so I just did it.
But what happened? Like, why security? And why did you make that shift from just like a technologist to coming in security? What was that shift overall?
I was working at the city of Shreveport. I went down to the computer room and I picked up one of those green papers, the computer papers, because everything was printed still. And I saw passwords, instant A passwords, 3-character clear text. And in my mind, I was like, wow, I could log on with these people's credentials. And so it started me on a path of being investigative. Same time, Superman was coming out. So there's Lois Lane, investigative reporter, except for investigative reporters weren't touted to make the same amount of income as a computer person. So that's how it was. It's the thrill of the hunt, the investigation. So I went into the corporate audit or internal audit function, what I just fell in love with. I could audit different sections, learn all about the business, learn about controls, and then One day, there was a gentleman named Richard Ricks at Nortel Networks where I was working and said, "Hey, I want you to go fix all the security issues you ever gave me." That's where it started. Fix the security issues.
A lot of people have this misconception when it comes to security. Like people imagine firewalls and hackers sitting in hoodies and things like that. But if we were to break it down for people, what does the role of a CISO look like? What do you do on a day-to-day basis?
The day-to-day life of a CISO, it does start very early. I start at 5 a.m. The first thing I look at is my cell phone to see if I had any text messages. The reason is, A, did we have an incident? But B, is there another major breakout or something bad happening in the world? And then I go look at the news and then I look at my emails. That's before I have my first cup of coffee. That's how it is for all CISOs because we stay connected and we are sending each other messages if we see something. And then it progresses, and so, yeah, it's not all about hackers and hoodies. Let's add some more complexity to the equation. It's about the continual evolution of governance and regulations and all the different things we've got to know there. So now, this past week I was learning what is the Cybersecurity Resiliency Act over in Europe. So all of the time learning about that. But then let's talk about, I mean, you're CEO now of a stealth company. So let's talk about vendor relations. You've got to know the vendors. You have to know what they're producing. I love to work directly with vendors to learn what problems they're trying to solve. And it keeps me up to date on where they are seeing other threats in other companies. So we have to stay engaged with the vendor community. And then technology, it keeps changing. So I have to keep learning. Good news is I'm so excited about what I'm learning. And I give you an example. I'm this week judging for some startup companies, and I can't believe the innovation that we have just in Dallas, Texas. So it is a great career, continuous learning, lots of work, and it doesn't end from 8 to 5. We're global.
That makes a lot of sense. So it's like started earlier, like let's say a few years ago, right? Security kind of came from IT predominantly. It was an IT function, and the goal for us to be more reactive. Like, hey, I found a risk, and now I'm going to classify the risk, and I'm going to mitigate that risk, right? And it was more around threat hunting, finding incidents, remediating incidents. A part of your job probably still is around that, right? But how has that job evolved over the years for a chief information security officer? Is it more around being strategic now, or is it still involving a lot of the threat investigation and incident remediation stuff?
Well, after having the opportunity to present to boards, it's clearly changed. The interest in an incident, yes, we don't want it to happen, but more importantly is the proactive perspective of how you prevent something from happening instead of the continual detection of things happening. So what can we do to prevent it? But more importantly is now how do we build confidence in what my security program is or Infor security program so that the people who use our services know that they trust what we have and they can trust that their data is protected. And it even goes beyond that. My whole world now is about messaging. How do I make sure that others I work with understand what I'm talking about and understand how to protect themselves? I get calls from people all of the time when they have issues, even at their home with their children and things that they've seen through the online community. So it's everything we touch. And again, it's amazing, but it is all encompassing.
How would you compare the role of a CISO to a role of a CFO, CIO, CRO, and a CDO? Like, what are the similarities and what are the differences, do you think?
Well, I think the first difference is CFOs make a lot more money. And so because I love to watch what they do and how stock prices change, and when you've got the good CSOs, I mean, well, the CFOs in place, and have been so fortunate to get to work with some really great CFOs. The difference that we've got though is we've got to understand how all their processes work. I have to know how the CFO is making sure that that we have closed correctly, the marketing people have the right messaging that goes out to the customers. And then if you look at the other groups, make sure they understand how we actually contribute. When you look at what is the top concern that boards have, it comes back to cybersecurity.
Mhm.
How do you feel comfortable with what we do?
Got it. Got it. So is it more around running security like a business? Is that what it's
Uh,
down to?
you're 100% right, running it like a business. And so we use the term here, risk adjusted. We there will be never absolute security, 100% everything's clean and running efficiently. Instead, what today is the largest thing that I need to take care of? And I mean, literally, I start with these to-do lists every day. And we have to make sure that the highest risk area has the most level of protection, and then look at alternate ways to control an environment. And this is a statement I'd love to get out to the regulator community. There's many ways to control an environment, and we don't have to necessarily be as prescriptive as we are. Let's look instead of what we're trying to achieve and look at the mechanisms in place to achieve those controls.
So for somebody, again, like this coming back to people who are exploring security in general, right? And people who have this misconception that you have to be a technical elite to come into security. Now that it's changing more towards also some of the aspects of running security like a business, how easy or difficult for them would be to explore this route? Like, how would you give them the advice that, hey, you can go and look at this particular criteria or aspect if you're more involved in your security engineering or you're like a techie, right? Just go here. Versus if you're not, you can actually focus on compliance, auditing, business of security, portfolio management, and stuff like that. What do you think would be the right path for someone who's just coming in?
So the first thing is to adjust your mindset and realize you did not have to major in cybersecurity or IT. That's the first thing. You don't even really have to have a degree. Now, I do gravitate to loving certifications because a quick way to learn content for specific topics. One of my most favorite security people, his name's Mike Martin. He majored in biology and he was super technical. And I was like, and he taught me so much when we were at Nortel Networks together. So how do you get into security? Number one, I recommend to the people that I work with is take advantage of the training, Udemy, LinkedIn Learning, a Cloud Guru or Pluralsoft, whatever they've got, and learn what governance is. Why? There's a certain skill set that handles the governance, and we call it EGRC or compliance. It's a completely different skill set than what you would have for security engineering. So those who gravitate towards the engineering functions, take a couple of the classes, take the AWS Solutions Architect training, take, some of the other cloud courses, go in and learn and see where your aptitude is. Then look at the opportunity for marketing people, security awareness.
Mhm.
This is where you influence others on how to educate them. And I mean, again, almost any type of discipline on where your superpowers are, there's a role for you in security. And again, it's cool, it's fun, and all types of people fit in. But I do recommend you get a broad spectrum of what is governance and compliance, what is identity and access management, how you get into environments. And the other thing is vulnerability management. So one is how you get in. Vulnerability is how do you have holes in the environment so you don't want people to get in. And then look at the ways that you protect yourself. And then incident response. A lot of people love incident response. Why? Is because you get to investigate, find out what happened and why did it happen, and then how do you make sure it doesn't happen again?
India is set to become the third largest economy by 2030. But cybercrime is already the third largest economy with around 9.5 trillion this year. Who do you think is going to win this race?
India is going to win this race. I have seen so much innovation when I go and work with the teams over there. I give you an example. I was in Bangalore last year, and one of the early career people was getting her master's in virtual reality security. I don't even know if I would ever been able to finish school because of the classes they get to take. And then looking at the energy level, the drive for innovation, I am so excited about where the Indian economy is going. And it's their skill sets and all of our skill sets together that are going to overcome the cybercrime challenge that we're facing.
Let's say there's a company that gets breached. What happens behind the scene that normal public doesn't see? Who gets called first? What are the first like initial activities that are like taking place?
Yeah, so I will kind of point it out on what I've gone through within incidents. And I've been in high tech companies, banks, and others. But what I typically someone sees something kind of weird and usually some kind of network spike or some kind of data movement or something. And quite often is the network engineers, or could be maybe an application malfunction. And so it's the support people that usually see it. And I want to call out also the help desk. Help desk gets a lot of questions. And so we're, from a social engineering perspective, but so something's happening, they see it. They start trying to triage it to see if the system's gone down or if there's some type of network issue or whatever. And instantly, when they figure that's not the case, they call the security person. So you have a security analyst that's on call or an incident responder that's on call. They reach out to that person and that person starts looking. And then what I've done is I want to make sure I'm called ASAP. Quite often, the CISO's called a little bit later, but I wanna get called ASAP because I love to be involved and know what's happening, and it's very unfair to expect the CISO to learn everything in an incident in a 10-minute debrief. So, if you go with the process, then you retain the facts and you're able to also start trying to figure out the investigation. So, when the security person is called and the CISO's called, then you start letting the other executives know, but you first wanna know, what are you seeing? And is there an impact? And you wanna stop what you're seeing from happening. So, I always my biggest one I've ever worked on was SQL Slammer that I doubt anyone will remember here, but networks just started shutting down everywhere. And so, I was at Nortel and it's like, how do you keep networks from shutting down? And so we created a zapper to zap off the infected devices within when that was happening. But when that happens, then the next thing is communication. So once you start communicating to your stakeholders, your executives, then you've got to have a written communication because they want to know what's going on. And also, we have disclosures. And so, what do we have to disclose? And if it's something that's happening across the industry, customers want to know, well, are we impacted? Or alternatively, if it's something happening to us, we want to make sure that we contain it. So we do need to bring in legal, we need to bring in our comps communications people, our marketing people, our sales teams, we need to make sure that they know exactly what is the messaging. So it's a whole all in company.
So you've led giants like Aetna, Bank of America, AWS, NetApp. What's been the most human moment you've experienced in your career? And one that like reminded you why this work matters?
So during AWS, there was a shortage of people. And during COVID, the state of Rhode Island, there's a lot of articles about it. They needed to get a system up very, very quick. And the reason was that the people in the state that did not were unemployed needed to get checks in order that so that they could buy food and take care of themselves. My boss, Hart Rossman, called me and he asked, we said, we need somebody. And I was running a professional services organization under him. And all I know is that I had to be the somebody because everyone was working with multiple customers because there was an influx of activity during COVID. I got white papers out. I read white papers. I called people that were on other engagements to get bits and pieces and glue together a way to make sure that people could get their money, their checks in a secure way from implementing a call center within 10 days. That took care that was livelihood. People had to eat.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that story. I think we often see security is just like a reactive principle, right? But this is where it matters a lot. Like you're actually doing the work that matters. So AI right now is shaking up everything. What's something you're excited about AI that could unlock something major in security? And the other question that I have is what's something that worries you?
Well, I can tell you what's most exciting about AI is not having to do the yucky work. And so I call it the yucky work. So looking at the technologies of how you can actually leverage AI to really hone in on when we talk about alert fatigue, you're able to hone in on, is an alert valid or not? And so implementing lots of technology. We've gone through SIMs for years, data lakes and all of that. But now, what is next? What can AI do? That's got me excited. And the other thing, I had to give you two things that get me excited is if you look at solutions such as Amazon Q, you will be able to now develop code in a way that we haven't done before. And in that development, actually have AI also make sure we're not developing security vulnerabilities. And so it's just that idea that really gets me excited because for some, I have been dealing with bad passwords and vulnerability scanning since years ago. I think there was a tool, the first vet scanner was called CyberCop. And I was like, ever since this, I was like, I can't wait to not have to do these things again.
So you can focus on more strategic aspect of security. For someone who's curious but overwhelmed by security, what's one real actionable thing they can do this week to get started or understand it better?
I just actually shared this with someone the other day. I said, go just use Monster. Go on monster.com and type in the word cybersecurity and read the postings and circle the words that get you excited. Because if you circle the words that get you excited, then you know and how to channel yourself. And then you go download Security 101 from LinkedIn Learning or from Udemy. You download that, you watch it. I would never recommend watching something over 30 minutes though, because our attention span is short and they'll scare you away. You want just the Security 101. And then when you've got that, you go Google. There's a lot of security people on LinkedIn. You find one of those people, you send them a message and say, "Hey, may I talk to you for 5 or 10 minutes?" Not the 30 minutes or an hour. Grab someone for 5 or 10 minutes and start following the lead of others.
So I'm going to do a quick rapid fire with you now. What do you think is the biggest misconception about CISOs?
That we're geeks.
Okay.
I am not a geek, so I just
One tool you use daily and can't live without.
I think we cannot live without authentication technology, and so I'm thinking in terms of you can talk about Entra ID or you can talk about some of the other competitors out there, but we have to have that.
Favorite resource to stay sharp in the field?
But I wanna say texting because I text, quite a few threat analyst people to stay up to speed, but the favorite resource to stay sharp in the security field, I would actually think it's the LinkedIn groups I'm assigned to because it's nice and short and I can hone into it, and then go into the white papers from AWS or Google or the other companies when I need to learn more.
What do you wish every CISO understood about security?
I wish that every CEO realized that their customers need to know that the companies they do business with are secure and be able to have a narrative around that when they talk to the customers. What's the 2 to 3 sentences to bring that assurance?
Do you have any specific advice or anything that you want to give to people about security or people just starting in security?
Yeah, so my advice to give to people that are just starting security is to not be afraid. Speak up. Just go out there and ask questions. The reason why is I've asked some very, very interesting questions in my path that were 100% wrong. In fact, I still do it. And so just ask the questions. I'm going to give you a story real quick. I think this story is worthy. There was a person on LinkedIn who posted, "How do I get into cybersecurity? Early career." And she got all these answers about, "Well, take these classes, go to these conferences, read this book." All I did is I responded to her, "Try me." And so her name is Naisha Williams, and she stopped her car, pulled on the side, and she sent me a message, "Can I call now?" I said, "Of course you can." I hired her at NetApp to run security awareness, gave her a chance. She's now gone to take master level classes on AI. How amazing it is. Now it's up to us to help her and show her the paths because she's got it gravitating, and so I still stay in touch with her.
Awesome. That was really good. Thank you so much. That was really, really gold. Thank you for your time, Minona, and for bringing clarity, warmth, and wisdom. Um, whether someone's just curious or dreaming big, uh, you just give them a path, I would say. Thank you so much for your time. Big thanks to Mignona for making security make sense and reminding us it is as human as it is technical. Until next time, stay curious, stay secure.